welcome everyone. We are now on season 2 of Leading with Empathy and Allyship. It's a live event and podcast series. I'm your host, Melinda Briana Epler, the founder and CEO of Change Catalyst, where we build inclusive innovation through consulting, training, and events. So in this series, we go deep into solutions, building empathy and understanding, and exploring tangible, actionable steps we can all take to be better allies and advocates for each other. So today we're discussing engaging leadership and a whole lot more with my friend and colleague and partner, client, Lionel Lee, head of diversity engagement at Zillow Group. Hey, welcome.
Hey.
It's been a long battle to get here.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I've had so many technical issues. Every time I do one of these, I'm not kidding. I don't know what it is. Obviously it's me, right? So I have to figure it
out. All good. I'm going to just say a few technical things and then we'll get started. So On screen, we have a ASL interpreter, Kalina. Our interpreters are sponsored by Interpreter Now, a deaf-owned company we're proud to partner with. We also are being live captioned by Maggie at White Coat Captioning. So if you want to turn on captioning, just go down to the closed caption button, turn on closed caption. You can also change the size of the text there. Our team, Renzo, Sally, and Antonia, are, among other things, monitoring the chat and the Q&A throughout our time. We do have a code of conduct, which flashed on the screen earlier. Basically, just be kind, be inclusive, and please share your aha moments and what you're learning and thinking. That helps us, that helps engage us and dialogue together. And then if you have questions, we will definitely leave time at the end for questions. So use the Q&A function down at the bottom of your screen, and then let's get started. So, Lionel, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm okay, honestly. I think I've gone through this enough times now where the first time it really bothered me, but now it's just kind of like, all right, let's just get there and get to it. And glad to have this conversation with you. Yeah. So yeah, that part's real cool.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about your story? How did you get here, and how did you get to be doing the diversity work that you
do? One, I never thought that I'd be working in a corporate environment. I think that needs to be said right off the bat. And then when I did fall into the corporate world, I hated it. As a Black professional, I was the only one. The first thing I was told was I need to get the street out of my voice and I'd be successful. That was, in a company that was, literally everyone was blonde hair, blue eyed. Right. And I was the only Black person there. And that kind of started it all off for me. But, I grew up, relatively poor. So and I had a 2-year-old child that I needed to support. So I sucked it up and went ahead. Long story short, I went through a couple different companies, became extremely successful at what I was doing. I was a recruiter at the time. And then just really had enough with the whole corporate environment thing and decided, you know what, I can still make money and just do this on my own. So I started my own agencies. And again, very long story short, one of my clients was Zillow Group. And one of my good friends was at Zolo Group, and she is the VP of talent acquisition there. She asked me in to discuss a few things, and then she said, we're trying to do this diversity thing. We don't know what to do. Would you want to help? And I said, no. My business is doing really well. I have no desire to go back into a corporate environment. And she said, would you do it as a consultant? And I said, yes, I would do that. And then 20 hours turned to 40 hours, and then 40 hours turned to 60 hours. And then next thing I know, I'm in the office and, doing all these things. And what came to mind for me and why I do what I do is I saw an opportunity to ensure that, or at least to try to make it so that others didn't have to go through the same things that I did. As a Black person in tech and Black person in corp. And so that's why I've stuck with them, and I'm very proud of the work that Zolo Group has done. I'm very proud to be a part of it. So that's a very, very long story short.
Yeah, no kidding. That is a long story short. We've talked more, a lot more about your story, your background, and where did you grow up?
I grew up in Honolulu, Hawaii during the summers, during the school year. My stepfather was military, but he and I didn't get along, so I didn't live with him. I lived with my aunt and uncle, and they lived in a place called Kuhio Park Terrace. If there's anybody from Hawaii on the line, you guys know what that is. It's a very notorious project that's located in Hawaii. And then my summers, the Hawaii side is my Korean side. I'm half Korean, half Black. Hawaii side is my Korean side. And then during the summers, I was sent to my grandfather, again, because my stepfather and I didn't get along. And I would hang out with him, and that's my Black side. And he is a Baptist minister, and probably one of the most influential people in my life. Definitely in the top two. Just an amazing man, biggest heart. And I think a lot of how I feel about my responsibility towards society in general comes from him. You know, the way that he looked at it. You know, he was the guy who had the summer camp for inner city kids and that kind of stuff. And then he also, I think he's a huge factor in my work ethic and what I believe in. Yeah.
Awesome. So you and I have talked about empathy and allyship. Lionel and I have long conversations, by the way, y'all. This is going to be a short conversation, relatively
Some with
speaking.
wine, some with wine, some with wine. Exactly. You know, one of my favorite folks right there.
So let's talk about empathy. What is empathy, and how does it relate to what's happening now in 2020?
I think that's a very interesting question, because I don't think that people really understand what empathy is. And I think that empathy right now has become trendy. You know, if you're going to care, you're going to have to care forever. You can't just do it because it's an opportunity for you to go take a selfie at a march or, you know, during one of the protests. You know, you can't have performative empathy. You know, it can't just be for the moment. You know, you can't do it to try and stand out amongst your friends. True empathy is one, learning, educating yourself on what is happening. It's listening to the oppressed. It's listening to the people that are identifying as the people that are suffering. It's not burdening them either, right? And it's a whole lot of things, you know. But the whole thing about empathy, well, it says, you know, you're not a part of this, or you're not the one that's deeply affected. Right. So now it's your job to understand what it's like for the deeply affected. And then you also have a responsibility, if you are truly empathetic, right, to stand by them and to uplift their voices. Empathy is a tricky one right now, because I do believe that, you know, like you and I have discussed, I think that empathy is really trendy right now. It's a good way to get likes and stuff on, you know, whatever your social media is.
Yeah, something you said the other day really struck me, that we're in this moment right now, and a lot of new people awakening, and to injustice, and to a lack of diversity, equity, inclusion, both. And you said that that sometimes that awakening happens, and it has to be so. I can't remember the word you used, but it's so in your face, and that's when. Why does it have to be so?
Right.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we as a society, like a lot of Eurocentric societies, are really just addicted to drama. You know, it's not like we like to, but that's how things change. You know, we need to have something super dramatic happen, right? We have to have, you know, a guy standing on another guy's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds in order for somebody to say, ooh, this shit is wrong. Right. And that's the frustrating part, because for many of us, people that identify as brown, Black, othered, we go through this every day. that visual that you see, that emotion that it invoked in you, is something that we have with us all the time. I'm not speaking for everyone, obviously, but every single person that I've ever spoken with felt the same way. You know, we know that these killings happen. We know that these shootings happen. We know that these abuses happen daily. You know, I was talking with a good friend yesterday, and he was driving cross country, you know, he and his wife, and we were talking about some serious stuff. And I was like, yeah, one of the differences for you and I is that when you take a cross country trip, you're not looking for cops, you know, and if a cop does get behind you, you probably won't even notice. I notice every single cop. I notice when they're behind me, when they're in front of me, when they're on the side of me, you know, I notice and I feel them. And for me, whenever I'm pulled over, right, and I keep thinking that's going to change as I get older, but it doesn't. Whenever I get older, it turns from fear to anger, you know, because I'm just fed up. I'm done. You know, I'm really done with this nonsense. You know, it's like, and I think many in my generation are, you know, I think many folks are in general, we're just done. You know, we're tired of being victimized. We're tired of being targeted, you know, and I am so happy that so many people are waking up. I think that's great. And please, you know, continue to do everything that you can to support and be an ally. But at the same time, I think the question should be asked, like, why did it take that? You know, we've been saying this forever. We've been saying this forever, you know, and then, you know, with media assistance since Rodney King, you know, that's the first video. That was the first video. And I remember that time clearly. I was there, you know, so yeah, I mean, I'm glad that people are waking up, but I do think that people need to really dig deep and ask why now.
Yeah. So you spent a lot, there's a lot of people that join these calls and also listen to the podcast that are really focused on how to create change in the workplace. So, and you've been doing a lot of work on building empathy and understanding in the workplace and across the company. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things? How are you doing that? How are you building empathy across the
Yeah, I'm in a very unique situation. My role is primarily to educate. My role is primarily working with our senior executive team, our C-suite, and then also providing learning opportunities for the rest of the company. But the way that we look at it is that, you know, my one of the VPs yesterday, when she was talking, she said, you know, so many companies are sitting there and talking about, or so many people just want to do something. They just want to do something. They want to act. And we came up with, I think, like over 70 different things that we can do as a company. But what was discussed even further for us is that there needs to be a period of education. There needs to be a time of education. And a part of what I do is exactly that. I help to educate. And my goal is really simple. I need to get the people in leadership, you know, the C-suite, to internalize this need for equity and belonging, which is what we call our program at Zolo Group. And I think it's very descriptive of how we look at diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I need to get them to internalize the need for it, because that business case that people love to talk about, you know, having a diverse workforce creates diverse ideas, a product that will attract more people, basically put more money in your pocket. I don't think that's really strong enough. I need for people to feel it the way that I feel it. You know, I need for people to understand that equity is important. I need for people to understand that the sense of belonging is just important and it's the right thing to do. And that's one of the things that we do. We also are very unique in that we have a relatively large team for a company our size that's dedicated to this. And we have some amazing people on that team, right? We have what I like to call like serious educators. That's what they are. They're serious educators, and they're really passionate about what they're doing. We have,
how many people are on your team? I think that's important for people to know, because
I think we have 16 people on our team right now, including an executive VP. And then what we like to say, I think a lot of companies say this, like everyone's on a DEI team. Well, we really believe that everyone is on the equity and belonging team. And we have 47% of our company is involved in our affinity networks or our ERGs, BRGs, whatever, which is super high compared to industry. We have dedicated folks that work collaboratively from learning and development and equity and belonging to create programs for our C-suite, our VP executives, director and above, and then they're working on things right now for our managers, which we know is one of the main main issues when trying to get people in and making sure that people stay. You have to get those folks on board. We have people that are on the ground, boots on the ground, working internally in our offices, making sure that people there are good. We work collaboratively with our HRBP programs to make sure that they're in the know and they have an understanding, a cultural understanding of the brown, Black, othered folks that we have, and what their issues may be and how to communicate more effectively with them.
HRBP, HR business.
Human resources business partners.
Thank you. And a question just came up in the chat too. How many people overall are at Zillow?
At Zillow, we're close to, I think we're at a little bit over 5,000 now.
So that's a big.
When I started with them, it was 1,700. Our team is bigger than like some of the big boys. I'm not going to mention any names, but I know for a fact our team is bigger because my colleagues are like,
yes, it is. What? That's why I wanted to really call it out, because I think it's important for people to know that's what it takes. That's what it takes.
Well, it's important to us. It's really important to us. And I think a couple things say, how important it is to us. We took on the moniker of equity and belonging before anybody was talking about equity and belonging. Now belonging is in everywhere and equity is in everything, right? But we did this 4 years ago, right? We were one of the first companies to have something within our core values that talked about how we felt about diversity and inclusion. Our include and empower core value sticks out every time you take a look, right? It's pretty interesting, I think, to watch people evolve into this space. And I'm not saying that we're way ahead of everybody, because we're not. We're still really working at it, but I think that's what makes us different. We work at it. We really, really work at it.
So a couple of years ago, I think, after my TED Talk on allyship came out, you sent me a text with a photo of me on a big screen and said you were watching my TED Talk with senior leaders. It was cool. It was, those things are cool. I appreciate you sharing it, because it that's the stuff that fuels you. As you know, this work is hard, and it's good to hear the stories of impact. So
you're the warrior, man. You're the warrior. I have very few people that I appreciate in this space, and you're definitely one of them.
Thank you. So, but I'm saying that to just to get to a point to talk about what you do to engage leadership. Sure. What are the different things that you do to engage leadership around empathy and around allyship?
Sure. One of the major things that I think we do that is very different than most other companies is that we actually have something called the Enb Learning Series, which is targeted directly at our executives. And at one time, like, for example, when I was showing your video, it was a demonstration of allyship, and then we would just have a free form conversation around it. And the participation varied often. It wasn't like mandatory that you had to go, but so many within our company were so interested that there was, good participation then. Now we've taken that even further. We have an EMB Pathways ambassador or Pathways manager that's working directly with one of our senior people from learning and development. And they put together specific programs, topics for that discussion. And we have that discussion 3 times, or it's available 3 times. I think it's in 1 week, and it's available every single month. And then on top of that, as an added resource, my role has shifted to speaking more directly with them. So I have regular meetings with numerous people from our C-suite and numerous people from our executive suite. And that's what I spend a lot of time doing now. It's just having these one conversations, or these, one-to-one, one-on-one conversations. And the thing is, it's like, the way that I look at that is that, oftentimes our white leaders are in situations where they want to understand whatever is happening. They want to really, especially for us, because they remember our leaders are a little bit different in that they've gone through this for the past 3+ years, right? And so they do have a different lens, I believe, than other executives. I've spoken with other executives from other teams or other companies, so I know that to be a fact. But still, there are situations that happen or things that happen that they don't necessarily have a good grasp on from a cultural perspective. So that's where I come in. And, they can ask me any question. I'm old enough now that I'm not as judgmental as I was when I was younger. I understand that people are at very different places in their journey. And if my end goal is to get them to a place where they truly understand this and they're going to be true warriors for this, then I have to be willing to work with them and understand them from where they're at and then try to get them there slowly if I need to. So I think that's really cool. We also are, not only I do that, but Crystal Tomzik, who just joined our group or just came over to our group, and she's the new VP of Equity and Belonging. She also does the same thing. And it's working out well. I mean, it's working out really well.
Yeah, you talk to me about just that relationship building with executives is so important.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, so that they can ask you the hard questions, so that you can push back and push back hard, right?
Yeah.
Both of those things, I think.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a relationship. They need to feel comfortable with me. And people that get kind of touchy and sensitive about why they're so uncomfortable, well, shit, think about it. I mean, they're right now, they're targeted too, right? And they're so worried about saying the wrong thing and so worried about stepping into these landmines, but a majority of the people that I have met within, at least at Zillow Group, and then some other companies as well, really want to do the right thing for the right reason. Yeah. They really do, but they're terrified of making that mistake. And what I'm trying to ensure is that, we give our executives the information that they need in order for them to walk into those situations courageously, right? And be okay with making a mistake and be okay with just taking that chance, right? But speak up, say something, do something.
That's awesome. And well, let's go to, what is allyship for you? What does allyship look like for you? And how has that changed in 2020? How's it look different?
Yeah, I think it looks really different. Like I said, I mean, allyship is one of those things too, where it's cool to be an ally. But I think that people really need to understand what allyship means. It means that you're there to support, not take over. My wife, we were talking the other day, and she coined this phrase. She said intrusive allyship. And I was like, whoa, okay. That actually makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. And I think that our allies, again, one, you need to educate yourself first. I think that needs to be a priority, and it can be ongoing, and it is a lifetime thing. I mean, I'm still, I'm supposedly the subject matter expert, which I still think is really hilarious.
We're all on a journey, right? There's no expert in this.
I don't know a single person who would consider them an expert in this, and I know some pretty amazing people, right? And but I'm supposed to be the expert in this, but the thing that I can say is, if you're gonna be an ally, don't try and stand in front of me. Don't try to lead. That ain't working. Don't try and make me lead. That ain't working either. Stand next to me. Help me fight. You know what I mean? Lift my voice. If you see something that is wrong within your organization, speak up. Don't just sit there and let it go. Because if you're not an ally, you're complicit. And that's just the way it works, right? And it's not. A friend of mine, we were talking the other day, and he said, we're at a time right now where you have to pick a side. This is no longer, that place. You can't just sit in the middle and think that things are okay, because either you're actively fighting against racism, against bias, against all these things, or you're complicit. And that's just the way it works. And I took that, I was like, wow, that's crazy. And I thought about it. I was like, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But that's what allyship means to me. And it means allyship also means taking the hits when they come too. don't just leave it up to us, don't take off and run off. You know what I mean? And I think I was talking to you about this the other day, but the folks that go to these protests and break windows and all that kind of stuff, that's not Black Lives Matter. That's not them. You know what I mean? That is not them. I mean, bless their hearts. I mean, I know kids that are anarchists, and I know kids that are Antifa, and I know people that are involved in that. And I know where their heart is, and I know what they're trying to do. But man, if you're going to be an ally, don't get us in trouble, because they ain't going to be looking for you, right? You take off your mask, you're just another white person walking around. We ain't got no mask to take off. We wear this all the time. Our skin is there regardless of what we want to do, right? And that is the target. Our skin is the target. We don't have to do nothing. We don't have to break a window. They will come after us. So understand that. If you're going to be an ally, be an ally.
Yeah. Can you talk about how allies have helped you in the past? Do you have a couple of examples?
Oh, God.
How allies have helped you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that my biggest ally, I was talking to you about her. Her name was Elizabeth Burbank, and I'm going to try and talk about her without getting emotional, but it's really difficult. I met her when I was 17 years old, and I was like really kind of jacked up, right? I didn't really understand my place, and I didn't understand a whole lot of things, and I didn't really see myself in a good way. And I met this woman named Elizabeth Burbank, and she was phenomenal. A little bit background on Elizabeth Burbank. Elizabeth Burbank was one of the first Dove models ever. She grew up in high society. She grew up, her mother, they owned like a 10-bedroom apartment or something that overlooks Central Park in New York. I'm just saying that to let you know, like, she came from money. A lot of money. She is a direct relative to the Bouviers, if you guys know who that is. And she decided that that was not going to be her life. She saw things that made her like really question that life, and she stepped away from it, her and her husband. She stepped away from it. Not only did she step away from it, when we talk about allyship, she put herself into situations that other people would not. She was the only white person. She moved here to Seattle, and she was the only white person that was, hand to hand with the Black Panthers, the original Black Lives Movement, right? She was hand to hand with the Black Panthers and doing breakfast serving and going around the city and talking to people and telling them what's happening and getting them involved. She helped me to see myself in a very different way, because I saw myself with all the stereotypes. That's how I saw myself. I'm that young Black kid, I'm not going to be anything, because society tells me I'm not going to be anything. I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to do that. And she started to just educate me. No, Lionel, this is where this comes from. That's where this comes from. And no, you don't have to buy into that. No, you don't have to do that. And it was amazing. She was amazing. She taught me how to drink coffee, or the first time I had coffee was with her. That's just the kind of person she was. And she and I would meet pretty regularly. And she, before I got into corporate tech, I was in corporate social services. And she served on the board of directors for a group called Chicken Soup Brigade. And Chicken Soup Brigade was a HIV/AIDS organization. You're from Seattle. You probably remember them.
Yeah, I do.
And it was started by a woman called Carol Sterling. And Carol Sterling was a person that was going around and working with people with HIV/AIDS. And while she was helping one particular person, she asked the gentleman a question, is there anything else I can do for you? And that person said, yeah, nice bowl of chicken soup. And that's how the organization started. Well, she was on the board of directors, and as an ally, she wanted to continue to help me. And they needed somebody that could kind of bridge that gap between the heterosexual Black community and the gay community. And she knew me as the Black man, but also one that was very comfortable in many different communities, including the LGBTQI. So she recommended me for that job, and that's how I started in social services. That was an ally, you know, and she helped put me in situations that I didn't think I was worthy of. You know, that was an ally. She stood up for me with the police, you know, and she was just like, and she was tiny, right? She was like maybe 5'3", you know, she was like this big. She was bedridden forever, so she was super skinny. And she got right in the police officer's face when they were trying to mess with me, and she just went off on them. And I'm sitting there like, oh, you know, because I'm just sure something's going to happen, but she was not scared. Yeah, that's an ally. That's an ally. And I've had a few. I've had more than a few, but that's the one that sticks out the most for me. That's the one that brings the most emotion for me. And I think that's what allies should do. I mean, if you're a real ally, somebody should be able to talk about you 50 years later, you know, and talk about you in that way. I think that that's what allies are.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to jump to some questions. So if anybody has questions, put them in the Q&A. Let's see. How do you respond to people who sort of acknowledge that violence against Black people is wrong? This is from Heidi Harris. But then go into victim blaming. The person was criminal, not the saint. The media painted
That's bullshit.
Blah, blah, blah.
That's just bullshit. That's the way that I respond to it. You know, when they do that, we live in a society, we live in a country that has dehumanized Black people to the point that when they get killed, we need to find a reason why we should have killed them. That's the country we live in, right? And if they're trying to have that conversation with me, I point them to those things, but I only go so far. Once they go to that point, I'll point out the fact that, okay, well, fine. You know, you have Dylan Roof, who walked into a place and shot 9 people, right? 9 people and killed them. What did they do? They went and bought him a fucking burger.
Yeah.
Right? There was nobody pulling up stuff about him. And anytime it's a white person that goes out and does something atrocious, they try to pull up the good things they did. The kid from Kenosha that shot the 2 protesters. Next thing you see him, like videos of him cleaning up graffiti and doing all that nonsense, right? I'm not saying that, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, that if you look further back in my past, I guarantee you might find something. I guarantee you that, right? And then you also have to acknowledge the fact that we're targeted more. We're targeted more. Same stuff that I did and got caught for, a lot of white folks did, they just didn't get caught.
Yep.
Because they weren't being looked at.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, there is that. And I think that is sad. I think that, you know, I would hope that we have moved past that, but it's apparent that we have not. You know, and it is apparent that we still are not human to too many. It's too easy to kill us.
Another question from Leor. How do we get, and I hope I pronounced your name right, how do we get people to opt in to DEI initiatives, opt into empathy? How do we get them to opt in from the top down? Those of us doing the work feel like we are preaching to the choir. Yeah.
How do we get them to opt in? It's a really long process.
Yeah.
It's a really long process. And I think that we live, you know, again, we live in a society that want immediate transformation. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. You have to meet the people where they're at. You have to understand where they're coming from. You have to understand what their reservations are, if they have any. You know, you have to understand, you know, what is it that drives them, you know, towards this. You know, really start to play into them. But also I would say the way that I do it is I'm really good at, one, being extremely honest. And then I'm really good at building relationships. But a part of that is because I really do look at people where they're at, and okay, well, that's where you are. Unless you say some nonsense to me, then you're gonna get an earful. but you know, it's a very long process, and I wish I had the magic formula, but I don't. You know, I don't. You know, one of the things that I think that we do really well is that we take a lot of guidance from our ERGs or our affinity networks. You know, one of the things that makes our affinity networks different, and this was something that was thought about way before we even started our affinity networks, was that too many companies like to prescribe to the affinity networks what they're going to be and what they're going to do. We've empowered our affinity networks to be able to drive change internally, to talk about what it is that they need, to talk about the issues that are bothering them. If you really want to help internalize the need for this, then you need to have a vehicle where your team members will speak up and where your team members will say this is important to them.
Yeah. Prasanna, it sounds like maybe she has some understanding of what you all are doing. How do you partner with Zillow's government policy team to ensure that Zillow is advocating for equitable housing policy?
Well, there's a lot of work around that right now. A lot of work that I'm not qualified to speak on, and two, I really don't want to speak on. But I know that one of the things that we were looking at is equitable practices in real estate. And it's one of our biggest initiatives right now. And it incorporates everyone from engineering to government relations to community relations to members from equity and belonging. It's a big push for us because we understand that a lot of the inequity that exists today is based on real estate and based on the ability to own real estate. We know that. So that is something that we're working on. But again, I'm not the most qualified to answer that. And I would direct you, if you want to contact me directly and you want that information, I can direct you to the right people.
Awesome. Toki asks about mentoring and reverse mentoring and how that plays a role in all of this.
Well, a lot of what I do is reverse mentoring. I don't know why it's called reverse mentoring.
It's mentoring, right?
It's mentoring. It's mentoring. Actually, like two of our, I got for my birthday, I got a text from one of our C-suite, and he called me his mentor, and I just kind of that took me back too, right? Because it's whoa, wait a minute, But mentorship is so important. It's one of the ways that people get ahead. I mean, if you look at it, one of the exercises that we did is think about the top 5 influencers in your life and write that down and then describe them. Are they white? Are they male? Are they whatever it is, but describe them. And then the thing that you found was that oftentimes those influencers looked exactly like them, right? And so that's how a lot of this inequity happened, is because when we go into a situation, we as Black, Brown, marginalized, othered folks go into these situations, we don't have that same relationship. We don't have that same mentorship. We don't have that same sponsorship. So mentorship and sponsorship is extremely important. And we, like our learning and development team, they have been just going at it, trying to figure out the best ways to do this. And we've talked to different companies that try to figure out a way to sort of automate this, to create systems for it, all these things. And we haven't found the perfect solution yet. But we're still working at it. And the one thing I can say is that through my work and through the work of a lot of the folks on the Enb team, many of our executives have taken on mentees, have taken on people to sponsor, have taken on people that might need their help in a very fair way.
Awesome. So Janet asks, she says, I'm a lot like you. I never wanted to work in the corporate world. I became a circus performer and a fashion designer, and now is starting into just early in her D&I journey. How does she position herself to be useful in this movement? In the Bay Area, there were only 5 or 6 of us against the rest of the local and rather historic industry, and the larger part of the industry has a level of privilege.
What industry is she in? Does she say?
Janet, what you want to put in the chat? What industry are you talking? Circus and fashion.
Circus and fashion.
Fashion.
The fashion industry, I can speak on the fashion industry because I have some knowledge of that and I have some friends there, but they were a lot of times with the fashion industry, their issue regards to diverse representation is that they don't have any white straight males, or they don't have very many white straight males. but they've been one of the first most welcoming places for people that are generally othered in other places. Far as positioning yourself, I don't know how to answer that because I'm not familiar with the circus and fashion industry. That kind of like, you know, it's difficult.
I mean, I guess as maybe just a broader question is like, when you started out, how did you start? What was your entry point, and how did you start building influence?
We had no idea what we were doing, honestly. I'll be totally frank. And then I was asked to go out and find best practices, you know, and bring those back. And I started doing the research, and I'm very data driven, and the data didn't make any sense to me. You know, people that have been in this DEI work for 10, 15 years, you know, they saw a 1% movement, either up or down, within the diversity of the recruiting and also in retention. And that didn't make any sense to me. So we started to do a lot of different things. One, we had to go out and find out what the issues were. We did understand that we had to do better in recruiting. We had to do better in retention. So a lot of it started with just conversations internally as to, okay, what's going on? How do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? And then also talking with people that left. I did a lot of that when I first started. Why did you leave? You know, what was the situation? And then bringing that back and trying to find solutions around that. And the biggest thing that came out was the relationship between them and their managers. You know, why was it that they were leaving? They didn't feel like they belonged because of their relationship with their manager. And we started dealing with that and started really working on making sure that our managers were leveled up so that they could understand. But this was senior management, right? You know, director level and above, which is a lot of what I did.
Karen asks, do you compensate or reward in other ways your affinity group leaders for their work?
No, we don't yet. We are still in the process of getting better in those areas. We give them a certain amount of time that they can take away from their day job so that they can do what they need to do. But we also understand, especially with what has just happened, Billow is Blacks at Zillow, and it's one of our most active affinity networks. And if you could imagine being in that situation where you have to go in and perform at a very top level, high level in your day job, and then on top of it, you are going back and you are the president, vice president, director of the affinity network, and you know that everyone within that network is really hurting, how much work that takes. We really took that into account, and there's numerous discussions going on right now on how we're going to better compensate with time or whatever it is for our affinity network leaders. I think with all the affinity network leaders that we have, I think they've done a tremendous job. They went far above and beyond. One of our affinity network leaders from Billow, he actually created a resource for allies. And that resource kind of went viral. Like a good friend of mine put it up on a thing, and I was like, hey, I know who wrote that, right? And it's someone who I'm very proud to work with that works over at Zillow Group. But no, I think that affinity networks, I don't think that they're fully utilized. I think we do a pretty good job of it, but I don't think that we're perfect yet. I don't think that they're rightly compensated. I think that is something that needs to happen. And I honestly think from my conversations with my colleagues at other companies, they're tokenized. And we work really hard to get away from that. We work really hard to make sure that that's not the case for us. Our affinity networks are fully capitalized. Our affinity networks have dedicated staff working for them. We have a dedicated program manager and a staff of program managers that work directly for the affinity networks. I think that's a step in the right direction. But again, I don't think that we're nowhere near perfect yet.
We have another question around affinity groups from Mariah. Essentially, they have low engagement with their affinity groups right now. How would you recommend improving that engagement and empowering and managing them?
I would say, more so, how important is the Affinity Network to your organization, to your company? And how is that communicated? Do you take part as a company in all the different events that they have? Do you showcase them? Do you have senior leadership executives that are sponsors for? And when we say senior executives, we mean at least director and above, right? That is sponsors for those groups. Do you have, are they capitalized? Do they have money so that they can actually go out and do things? Are they compensated, right? Do you have leadership roles for them? You would have to take a look at what the infrastructure is for your affinity networks, and then maybe you can come up with ways to actually help them engage. But it also has a lot to do with how you communicate who you are as a company and what the things that are important to you. I think the reason that we have such high engagement is that our CEO speaks about the importance of equity and belonging in numerous venues. We're one of the only companies I know where at every meeting that we have, Zillow Group meeting that we have, all company meeting, when a presenter goes up, and they're executives, when their presenter goes up, when they have their bio slide up, on their bio slide will be their name, right? And how they prefer what their pronouns are underneath. How many companies do you know that do that? How many executives have you seen do that? Yeah. And they do that externally as well, because it's in all their signature files for their emails. And that itself says, this is important to me. This is something that's important to us as a company. That carries down to the rest of the employee base. Like, this is something that's really important. That affinity network needs allies, or that affinity network is doing something cool, right? And then you also have to make it safe places for those affinity networks. Too many Black and brown people, they don't have the best experiences, and they're not just drawing from their experiences, but they're drawing from the experiences of their fathers and their mothers and their uncles and their aunts and their cousins, right? And their friends, when they go into work in corporate. They need to know that affinity network or that ERG is a safe space for them, that this is something that is important to the company, that they're not being tokenized.
Awesome. Last question, and then I have one more question. So Jacqueline, essentially she's asking, I think, there are these systematic injustices that are, historical, have been happening for a long period of time, big issues in the world, in addition to engaging people in the workplace on creating change. And how do you get them to engage outside of the workplace and communities to take action?
We have programs within our company that allows for our employee base to go and engage within their communities. I would ask, what that brings up for me is, again, going back to allyship, right? If allyship is only important to them in the workplace, then that's the bigger question. Like, why is that, right? Because that's not where my allyship began. My allyship began within the community, right? With the LGBTQ community and other groups that I don't necessarily identify with.
Yeah.
But that carried over into work. That would be my question there. And I would have to ask, that's where I would be at with that. It's like, okay, why are you only doing this at work? Is it a way for you to think you can get a promotion? Like, you want people to think good of you? How authentic is it? Because if it's authentic, shouldn't you be doing it outside of work?
Yeah.
Shouldn't that just be who you are?
And it's all interconnected.
It's all interconnected. It tells who you are. If you're a person that is like you, like, one of the things that I liked about you was that when you and I talked, at first I thought, okay, well, here's this other white woman, she's really into diversity. Great. Let's have this conversation, and you're going to try and get me to partner up with you as a company and give you money. And the first conversation that you and I had, it was at a restaurant in San Francisco. And we just started talking about all the injustices And I could tell at that moment, like, you were for real. Like, this was something that you would do for free, right? Like, this is for real for you. That's what an ally is. You know, that's what a true ally is. It's not their job. It shouldn't be their job. It should be their passion. It should be who they are.
Yeah. Yeah. So last quick question is, how do you take care of yourself?
I don't. I'm not good at it. I'm not good at it at all right now, honestly. Our company is really good about telling people to go take time off, right? I mean, they're really good at it. We were going through that period, the most recent, or prior to the most recent, with Jacob Blake. We were going through the George Floyd, and every person that works in this space that I knew was just fatigued. But we had to keep going. We couldn't afford to stop, right? Because that was our gig. That's what we were doing. I try to take care of myself. I like to work around my house. I build a lot of stuff. That's why I got so many scars on me. I'm very careless, obviously. I try to work out when I can. I drink a lot of wine. I think, honestly, I think that if I didn't have a boss that said, go take time off, I don't know that I would. And we actually made that like a company thing. I wouldn't call it a company initiative, but it was pretty much screamed at everybody during that time. And we're very privileged to be a company that can afford to do that. But we, basically from our C-level down, the communication was, we know you're hurting. Go take time off. Please take time off. And everybody did. Most of us did. Not all of us, but most of us did. So no, I don't do a good job of taking care of myself. I wouldn't say I do that.
Okay. Well, as your ally, I'm going to check in on you and make you do better.
All right. When this COVID stuff's over, we'll get together.
Yeah,
definitely.
Well, thank you for this. Thanks.
Thank you for what you do, man. Thank you for what you do. Really, you and Change Catalyst, really. Thank you for what you do. Keep up the work, and you let me know how I can help.
We'll do. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
And appreciate each one of you tuning in. Join us each week for Leading with Empathy and Allyship. You can sign up to attend live or catch the podcast or video later. Just go to changecatalyst.co and sign up for our newsletter, stay in the loop. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and our YouTube channel and take action. Allyship is a journey. And what step will you take next? Take a step now. All right. Thanks, everybody.